because I was mulling my options. I
Mhm.
came back probably 3 months later and then committed to that school. And then when I committed to that school, just the regular congratulations. We were like, oh, we're so happy to have you. Can't wait to have you on campus.
Mhm.
In the summertime, I was going through my conditioning plan, all things like that. I'm ready to go to school.
Mhm.
And like I said, a week before training camp started, there was no money in my first year was super, super rough. For a combination of things, COVID was definitely one of those things.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, I know you were real estate in 2020, so it was probably a great time, because the interest rates were low, everybody was buying, a lot of people were selling. But for me, I didn't have none of my real estate career before I had made that switch. I was purely a buyer's agent. I had done a
Mhm.
few listings here and there, but I was just pretty much buyer's agent. And I was able to do that though without any leads or anything like that because all my leads were coming from social media at that
Mhm.
point. So, I was satisfied with that. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm making good. Yeah.
And I'm telling you, he's onto something. Okay. He's
Mhm.
absolutely onto something. And what he's saying basically is social media is turning us against each other. Social media is making us enemies where we otherwise were friends.
True.
Okay. And
Yeah.
it's isolating us and making us into hyper partisan tribes.
Hmm.
Okay. Where if you don't agree, if you don't think the way I do politically, you're the enemy. Did you know there's a technology that's actually an app on your phone that uses sound waves to tell your brain what you want your brain to do? We had a young man that was on a guest on our podcast, the Mike Litton Experience, who had a traumatic brain injury. He was sleeping 3 hours a night. He's using NuCalm now and he's sleeping more. Go to NuCalm.com, Mike15 promo code. NuCalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience podcast. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. Mike is passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
Chris A. Williams, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. Like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. So, with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born, go up to today, and then we want to talk about the amazing things you're doing in real estate.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Thank you for having me on, Mike. This is definitely an honor. I'm glad to be up here, share some value with the audience. I hope that they can take some insights and, implement some things in their business to make them some money too.
Oh, I
So
know they're
thank
going
you
to. I
for
know they're going
sure.
to. Thanks for being here, bud.
Definitely. Definitely. So I mean, kind of starting it out where I was born. I was born in the Hampton Roads area of Virginia. A lot of people nationwide don't really know our area that well, but I always say that's where Allen Iverson was born. That's where Pharrell was born. Percy Harvin. We've got a lot of notable figures that have came from our little area. We're not like a big California, New York, anything like that, but we have a lot of talent and a bunch of different avenues coming from our area.
That's
So
cool.
yeah, that's where I was raised. Specifically, born and raised in Virginia Beach,
Hmm.
Virginia, one of the most popular ocean fronts in the world. Um, so I mean, when it comes to my backstory and such, I'll say the thing is I'm in real estate now, but growing up, I didn't know anything about real estate. I had no
Hmm.
desire to be in real estate. Like my mom, she would watch HGTV, and when she was watching, I would go in the other room because I literally, I didn't care whatsoever about real estate.
There's
Um,
other stuff that had your interest, right?
yeah, 100%. Some of those other things was mainly football, sports
Yeah.
for sure, but football, that's what I excelled at. That's what I was known for in
Mhm.
my area as one of the top football players in my area.
Oh,
Um,
cool. What position
so
did you play?
yeah, I played great question. I played almost everything except quarterback and lineman. My favorite positions were I'll say slot receiver and cornerback though.
Why?
I really like corner at first because that's when I first started getting some playing time was at cornerback. Um, I just it's fun, like, technique, getting people's head. I used to trash talk all the time, I like that at cornerback.
Yeah.
Um, I started really liking slot receiver though because I just like being creative. I could
Mhm.
get really creative with my routes, do a lot of different things, and I just like to embarrass whoever was guarding me. To if we're being honest.
I love that.
Yeah, those were the positions I played. So going out of high school, I was originally supposed to play football in college. So
Yeah.
I had a few different offers, different places and such. But Yeah, I mean, I could say this is kind of where my real estate story starts because I actually didn't play in college because I got my scholarship taken away a week before training camp started.
Why?
Um, Now I didn't do anything. I wasn't wilding out or doing anything like that. But it's kind of a crazy story. So when the college that I committed to, when they offered me, they said, and remember, when they offered me, they didn't tell me I had to commit that day. They
Okay.
gave me the offer. You say, "Hey, thank you for," I said, "Thank you for the offer. Let me think on it," so on and so on, because I was mulling my options. I
Mhm,
came back probably 3 months later and then committed to that school. And then when I committed to that school, just the regular congratulations. We're like, "Oh, we're so happy to have you. Can't wait to have you on campus."
mhm,
In the summertime, I was going through my conditioning plan, all things like that. I'm ready to go to school.
mhm,
And like I said, a week before training camp started, there was no money in my account. Like, in college, you can check your
mhm,
portal to see, all right, is the scholarship money there? There was no money in my account.
mm,
And at first I was like, whatever, it's just probably a technical error, no issue.
mhm.
But it's my dad, actually. He's the one that told me, he's like, something doesn't seem right. How about you call the coach and see what's going on? So I called the coach and he was like, yeah, man, you were actually supposed to commit that day we offered you. We don't have any scholarships left. I
Oh,
said,
man.
"What are you talking about?" Like
And nobody told you? Nobody said anything?
exactly. There was multiple chances to let me know that also too,
Yeah,
which is
no kidding.
the crazy thing, and I was
Especially when they offered it to you, right?
exactly, yep. When they offered me, they should have told me then. When I
Yeah,
committed, they should have told me then. In the off-season training, they should have told me then.
yeah.
Nobody said
The whole
anything at all.
summer, the whole thing. Oh my,
Exactly. So,
crazy.
I was really upset with him about it. I was
Yeah,
letting him know, like, what are we gonna do? Because I
yeah,
can't, I'm not going to college without the scholarship because I didn't want to be in debt. That
right.
was a big thing for me. So, he said, you got two options, man. He said, hey, you can come here and earn your scholarship, or you can stay home. I said, okay, I'm staying home. Like,
Wow.
you know. So, remember, this
What a
is
shame. I'm sorry,
yeah.
man.
It's crazy. So remember, this is a week before training camp started. So all the other schools, they filled their spots. I was
Yeah,
reaching
they
out
were
to
out of
schools.
scholarships too.
Exactly. They were like, hey, we would love to have you walk on. But remember, a big thing for me was I didn't want to be in college debt.
Right.
So I was kind of just trying to figure out things to do. So I decided to go to community college
Mhm,
until I could figure some things out. So I enrolled there in my local community college. And I was still trying to pursue the football thing, but I was really discouraged with it. What happened, like it left a really bad taste in my mouth. And the other schools I was talking to, they were saying, same thing, walk-ons and things like that. Um, so I was just trying different options, seeing what will work for me in the military.
mhm.
Originally is what I was gonna do. So I had gone to MEPS, or I hadn't gone to MEPS. I had gone to the recruiting, all things like that.
Yeah.
And the only reason I hadn't been shipped out yet is because I need to go to MEPS. But what was taking so long with MEPS is because I actually have a heart murmur. But remember, I played sports all my life.
Right.
So the heart murmur is just there. It doesn't affect me whatsoever. It's just there.
Mhm,
But in the military, they're very, strict on things.
mm.
So they're making you do a lot of testing and things like that. So that was honestly like a year and a half process that I was waiting to get shipped out to go to MEPS.
Wow.
So, I'm like, hey, what are we doing here? I
Yeah.
can't just be waiting for forever.
Right.
So, at that time, I started exploring different options. I got a second job because I was working at Foot Locker selling shoes at that time, and I got
Yeah.
a second job at Enterprise. I dropped out of college from the local community college because the main reason I dropped out is because I actually didn't have a car.
Mhm.
So I was taking Ubers to get around, and Ubers can get quite expensive. And I'm like, okay, I've got to take an Uber to go to class in the morning, and I got to take another Uber to go to work. Like, this doesn't really make much sense. So I'm
Yeah.
like, okay,
You're like
I'll
working
be
to
in.
pay for Ubers.
Literally, exactly. So I was like, yeah, I've gotta get rid of one because I have no money left in my bank account. Like literally my whole check will go towards Uber. So I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
this doesn't make sense. I was like, okay, if I keep working, at least I can make money. College, I don't really even want to be there in the first place. So
Mhm.
it's pretty simple. Let me just drop that. So yeah, like I said, I started working my two jobs. And at my job at Enterprise, I wasn't even selling cars or anything. I was the guy that cleans out cars.
Oh,
So
okay.
when I was
So when they
cleaning
brought
out.
the rentals back?
Exactly, yeah, that
Okay.
was my job. I barely even talked to customers, I was
Yeah.
just the car cleaning guy. So when I'm cleaning out cars, I've got my earbuds in. A lot of people will listen to music, but I like to listen to podcasts, read
Mhm.
books on Audible, or listen to books on Audible, things like that.
That's
So one of
smart.
my favorite podcasts, thank you. One of my favorite podcasts the host, he was talking about real estate, and that's when I
Mhm.
pretty much got introduced into real estate. Now, what he was saying, it sounded really, really good. I'm like, okay, wow, like this is something I want to do, you
Mhm.
know. But it ended up he was talking about real estate investing.
Mhm.
And at the time, I'm what, 19 years old, so I have no money, of course. I'm like, I started doing some research. I'm like, dang, I don't have any money. How am I gonna do real estate investing?
Right.
So I thought, that was out at the time. So I was like, real estate sounds really good. Though. There's got to be something else that I can do. So I started doing a little bit more research, and then real estate agent that
Mhm.
popped up, and it's like, okay, a real estate agent, you're selling houses, and literally my mindset was, all right, I'm working at Foot Locker right now. I'm selling shoes. I'm one of the best salespeople in the district. If I could sell shoes, I could sell houses.
Sure.
That was literally my mindset. So I went on Indeed. I looked for places that were hiring people without a license, and
Mhm.
there were two people at the time. One never called me back. One did. So, I ended up going with them. And I got licensed in March of 2020, literally as the world shut down. So
Wow.
that was my start
Your
in real estate.
timing's impeccable.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Not planned whatsoever, super crazy time. But hey, we made it work. We got through it. My first year was super, super rough. For a combination of things, COVID was definitely one of those things.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, I know you were real estate in 2020, so it was probably a great time, because the interest rates were low, everybody was buying, a lot of people were selling. But for me, I didn't have none of that. All my peers were selling, even people who came in at the same time as me. I wasn't selling anything. I only sold two houses. I got licensed in March. I sold one in August, and I sold one in November.
Yeah.
So I'm like, man, what is wrong with me? But
Nothing. Nothing. You're new. You're
exactly.
new.
It's all about
That's all it
resilience.
was. You're new and nobody really knows you, right? And
Exactly.
I mean, your first year in real estate is gonna be rough. It just
Yeah.
is. I mean, it's mine was too.
Yeah.
But it was a long time ago. It was 33 years
Yeah.
ago
Yeah.
this month. Like,
Nice.
yeah,
Congrats.
right. So that's normal, right?
Yeah.
So in 2020 people were selling their houses, especially
Mhm.
once the shutdown was over,
Yep.
people had been crawling the walls. Like
Yeah.
the walls felt like they were closing in on them, right?
Yeah.
And they were uber motivated,
For
no
sure.
pun intended, but they were uber motivated, right? To go and sell their current property and buy
Yep.
something bigger.
Yep.
People were gonna, one friend of mine, his wife received notice from her company she'd been working for 20 plus years that she
Mhm.
would literally never work from the office again. She would be working from home for the rest of her career for
Yeah.
another 10 years, basically, right? And so they
Uh-huh.
went out and sold the house that they had and bought a bigger house because they
Yeah.
needed a place that she could call her office. And it
Yeah.
just worked out better for us. And there were so many people doing that, man. It was
For
crazy.
sure. Yeah.
RV sales
With
went
remote
through the
work.
roof,
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
It was
Yep.
a wild, wild time. And it was just people were busting out. Like as
Yep.
soon as the shutdown was over, it was just crazy, the motivation, nuts.
Mhm.
And I kept telling people, I'm like, I'm hearing from my clients that they're going nuts. Okay. I'm
Yeah.
hearing from my clients that they're not in a big enough property. If this pandemic ever hits again, because that's in the back of their mind, right? This
Yeah.
pandemic ever hits again, they're going to want to be in a place that's nicer, that has more space where they can work if they're,
Yeah.
forced to work remotely, that kind of thing.
Yep.
So it changed the way everybody looked at it. It also changed the way that they looked at their values
Mhm.
because they had a job, right? That they were going to on a regular basis, and they were they had compromised here and compromised there, and that was out the window, man.
Mm.
They aren't compromising anymore, right? They are like
Yeah.
maxing out what they can qualify for, maxing out what they
Yep.
can buy because it changed the way they looked at life,
Yeah.
right? Because all of
Yeah.
a sudden the people around them are dying,
Yeah.
right? And they start looking at life differently. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And
Mm.
one of the things that we talk about a lot on this podcast is the power of questions. I
Yeah.
ask questions all the time, every day, right? Interviewing people for the podcast.
For sure.
And one of the things we talk about is getting deep with our clients. So when I would talk with my clients who were cooped up and they felt trapped in their houses and all this kind of stuff, when I would talk with them, they would tell me about this is what's going on. I'm like, great. How does that
Mhm.
make you feel?
Mm.
Right.
Mhm.
And then they would tell me, and I'm like, okay, well, tell me more about that. Why do you
Yeah.
feel like that? Right? What is it that's
Mhm.
happening right now that's driving this feeling, right? And they would go into, well, this happened in my childhood, and this happened, right? And it's bringing back all these memories are flooding back, and all right.
Yeah.
And what it would do is it open up opportunity because we'd have conversation about, oh, you know what, so and so. I just talked to so and so the other day, and they want to buy a house as soon as the pandemic is over too. They want to sell their house, right?
Yeah.
In real estate, the absolute best thing we can do when we're sitting with somebody is ask them questions
For sure.
and then ask them about what they just said, right? They're called piggyback questions. And
Mhm.
what it is you're, so I told my kids, they're 24 and 26 now, but I told them, I said, you need to print out a piece of paper on your word processor on Microsoft Word, right?
Mhm.
At the top, it needs to say stay in curiosity. At the bottom, it needs to say stay out of judgment.
That's
Right?
good. That's
That's
good.
going to make you successful in everything you do. I don't care what it is. It works in your relationships, right? It
Mhm.
works in your, family relationships, your wife, your significant other, that
Yeah.
husband, whatever. Works with your kids, works with your coworkers, works with big time with your prospects,
Yeah.
okay? Because you get to the heart of what's really going on. What drives me nuts about the real estate industry is they stay here.
Mhm.
This is
Yep.
politically correct. This is safe.
Yeah.
Okay. You've got to care enough to ask with your prospects. Okay.
Yeah.
And so ask them about ask them about, how where they are right now is potentially limiting what they're, if you were in a place that had an extra home office, how would that affect you?
Yeah.
Okay. And how would that make you feel? You with me? And all of a
Mm.
sudden, you're going to get down here somewhere and you're going to find some pain.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
And if they express that pain to you and you can listen to them about and just let them talk, you'll bond with them.
Mhm.
You with me?
I agree.
In a way that nobody else on the planet ever does. The key to real estate is to have those conversations at such a deep level with your prospects and your clients
Yeah.
that they never want to have that conversation with anybody else ever again. It's like taking out an insurance policy. So they stay with you.
Mhm.
They'll
That's
never
good.
use anybody else.
Yeah.
Right. And they'll
Yeah.
talk to they'll talk to their friends and their family and their coworkers. And they'll say, you know something? You might have met a real estate broker, but you've never met Chris Williams.
Mhm.
Right. You've never met somebody like him.
Yeah.
And it's because you don't stay here. It's because you go here, right? I apologize. I'm on my soapbox, but
No,
it's
that's
just one of
good.
those. I do a lot of teaching in our industry.
Yeah.
And one of the things so I'm writing a book on the power of questions,
Nice.
literally writing a book on the power of questions because they're the bedrock of effective human communication, right?
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
there you go. Okay, so let me ask you a couple of questions. Speaking of the power of questions, let me ask you a couple of questions about your childhood. So growing
Okay.
up in Virginia Beach, Virginia, what was your favorite thing about growing up there?
Um, I'll say the variety of people, to be honest with you. I dealt with people of all types of different backgrounds, whether it was black, white, Latino, Asian, all types of races, all types of, poor, rich, middle class, all of that. So I got exposed to so many different cultures and such.
So a
So
lot
I
of
think
diversity.
yes, super, super valuable.
That's cool. Growing up, who was the most influential person to you?
Mm. Um, I'll say athletes, and to be honest with you, like I really love Kobe Bryant. Growing up, literally have a Kobe Bryant tattoo on my arm. Like that's yeah, I like really study Kobe Bryant like
Mhm.
all the time. Not just watching his games, but hearing his mindset, watching YouTube videos. Like that was probably the most influential person for me growing up.
That's cool. The Mamba. The
Yeah,
Mamba,
yeah,
baby, right?
exactly.
My
Yes,
son
sir.
is a huge Kobe Bryant fan. Huge,
Yeah, gotta
huge.
love it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Shout out to Kobe. So,
exactly.
so we know that your favorite sport in high school was football. We know
Hmm.
that you love playing cornerback and wide out and that kind of thing. We know why,
Yeah,
right? Did
Mhm.
you have a favorite subject in high school?
Um, favorite subject. Weightlifting. That
It's
doesn't really
okay.
count, you know?
That's okay.
As far as the traditional ones, no, not really. I mean, I was really good at English. Like, I'm
Yeah.
very naturally talented at writing. So
Yeah.
that was probably the easiest for me. I know which one I hated though. I hated math. Like, I could not stand math. Math and Spanish. Those were the
Yeah.
two ones I
And
hated.
now you're in real estate where it's numbers, right?
Yeah, exactly. Especially what I do now too, like KPIs, metrics,
Yeah.
different formulas. I'm doing all that, and I'm like, dang, high school me. Yeah.
Unreal, huh?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so did you have a favorite teacher in high school?
Ugh. Going back to weights. Yeah, my weightlifting teacher who was
There
also
you
my
go.
football coach.
There you
So
go.
yeah, shout out to Coach Lance.
Yeah, there you go. Cool.
Mhm.
So after high school,
Mhm.
you decide to get into real estate, right? Now
Yes.
you're working at Enterprise and you're working at Foot Locker.
Yep.
You mentioned a minute ago that when you were at Foot Locker, you were one of the best salespeople in the company, right? Or in the region or
Yep.
whatever.
Yep. Exactly.
What do you think, looking back,
Mhm.
was the most important one, the single most important thing that made you a top salesperson at Foot Locker?
That's a great question. When I got to Foot Locker, my first job was Subway, and then I went straight from Subway to Foot Locker, so I had no sales experience.
Right.
And Foot Locker doesn't necessarily teach you like real sales experience, so I didn't have that, and I was still selling at a very high level. Really, I really like shoes. I think it's just
Mhm.
my belief in the product is what was able to sell people because I never had to lie to people. I didn't know any sell tactics like to get people to say yes. They would come in, they'd be interested in shoes. I'd be like, "Hey, you guys should probably get this one because I have these ones. These are really comfortable." So just basic spill
Okay.
and having a real conversation with them, no scripts, no nothing like that. And they would buy it. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Because I actually genuinely wanted to help people. That's the thing. I think that's why I was able to sell shoes.
Well, they had a need when they walked in, right? And you
Exactly.
fulfilled that need. That's really what
Yep.
sales is, right?
Exactly.
Finding the need and then figuring out if you have a product that can solve that. So some people are looking for
Exactly.
running shoes, some people are looking for basketball shoes, right?
Yep.
Some people are just looking for a, let's be honest, fashion statement, right?
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yep.
I don't know how else to say it. That's just the way it
Yeah, it's
is,
true. It's true.
So
Yeah.
my son was a big basketball player,
Okay.
MVP of his team, all this stuff in high school.
Nice.
Pardon me. And we had to special order his shoes because of his size of his foot.
Okay.
And he just had certain shoes that he just loved.
Yeah.
Like, it was Carmelo Anthony came out with a shoe, a basketball
Yeah.
shoe.
Mhm.
And it looked like a clown shoe. To him, it was the coolest looking shoe on the planet, right? He
Yeah,
wore
yeah,
those things out, man. I mean, he
yeah,
practiced more than anybody. He played more than anybody, because he was completely committed to his craft,
yeah.
to his sport. He played it full time, played it year round. And he
Nice.
had a private coach, the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
So and he was in AAU, the whole thing. So
Mhm.
he played a lot of basketball. He wore those things out. I mean, we
Nice.
figured out how well they were designed or built,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
crazy.
Uh-huh.
So after Foot Locker and
Mhm.
after Enterprise, you decided to go into real estate.
Yep.
And you sold a couple of houses your first year. Congratulations, by the way. There's a lot of people in this world that don't sell anything their first year.
Thank
Okay.
you, I appreciate it.
What was the single most important thing you learned year one in real estate?
Great question. About ego. You gotta leave ego at the door. Can't have an ego. Whether you're starting, whether you're experienced, you can't have ego. And
Why
when
do
I
you say
first
that? Why do you say that?
Yeah, I say that, I mean, from personal experience, when I started, I did have somewhat of ego. I was like, literally, I thought, hey, I'm selling all these shoes at Foot Locker. I can sell houses very easily. I got humbled very quickly.
Mhm,
So I wasn't when you have an ego, it's kinda harder to listen because
mhm,
you tone out people. You're like,
mhm,
when people are telling you things, coaching things, you're like, actually, no, I think I can do it better.
mhm.
But that's why getting humble is very important and why I'm glad it did happen to me because now I can just leave ego completely regardless of the success I have or anything like that. So I think that's the most important thing that I learned is you gotta leave ego because I think that's one of the biggest things that was holding me back until I was really humble and ready to be willing to take coaching and listen to literally anybody, that's when I started having success.
So when the student's ready, the teacher will appear,
Yes, yes. Yep. Love that quote. Mhm.
right? So
Exactly.
so if you were to say, if you were to put the ego thing differently,
Yeah.
would you say that you became learning based?
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
The thing about my first year, man, I was doing all the stuff. Like, I know a lot of people don't sell their houses their first year, but a lot of people are working part time.
Yeah.
I was doing it full time and not just 40 hours. I was 80 hours in a week, first person in the office, last person to leave, and I was doing all the things that I thought was right, all the
Yeah.
things that I thought would succeed, but they just weren't working, you
Yeah.
know? So I learned over time, like, I just got tired of running to the wall and constantly hurting myself. It's like, all right, you can only run to the wall so many times. It's like, okay, let's be smart now.
Your head starts hurting, right? You're like, "Where's
Exactly.
my helmet?"
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, I
I know that
mean,
feeling.
from that time on, actually, yeah, probably one of the biggest changes I made that helped me out was just always intake information. I did that from pretty much the end of that first year till now, to this day. Like, when I'm in the car, when I'm working out, when I listen to music, I'm always listening to podcasts. I'm always intaking information.
Yeah,
So
that's
I think
cool.
that's helped out tremendously.
It's incredibly smart, man. It's incredibly
Thank you.
smart. Never stop learning, right?
Exactly.
Never stop learning. So,
Exactly.
first year you sell 2 houses. How do you do year 2?
I did 24 houses the next year.
Beautiful. Great job.
Yeah. 12x increase. So.
What's the number one thing you learned year 2?
Um, good question. Hmm, great question. I've never been asked that before, so I gotta think about that.
Hey, I'm pretty good at this.
Yeah, for sure, I would say.
I like the single most popular thing our guests say on this podcast is,
Yeah.
"Wow, nobody's ever asked me that question before."
For sure. I would say, man, really leaning on different ways to provide value to clients
Yeah.
and also different marketing strategies. Those were the two biggest things I learned my second year. Even like I discovered that in our area or at that time, not many agents were going to closings.
Mhm.
I'm like, this is a really easy marketing tactic because if I
Mhm.
just go to the closing, I take pictures, I tag my clients on social media. Now it hits my audience, now it gets their audience. Like, this is just a super easy way because it's stuff
Mhm.
we're already really supposed to be doing. So
Right.
little things like that, I just picked up on, and that's been able to, set me apart and how I was able to, get a ton of social media leads and such just by
Okay.
little things like that.
Okay, that's cool. So you're year 2, you
Mhm.
start going to closings and you're taking photographs and you're posting them on social media, that kind of thing, right?
Yep.
Congratulations on your closing, all this, right?
Mhm.
And
Yep.
that's helping you to generate more business. Is there
Exactly.
anything else that you did year 2 that you didn't do year 1?
Um, hmm. Not really, to be honest with you. I didn't really start making big changes in the business till the following year.
Okay.
That year, 24, I was really kind of on the same path, things that I was doing. Like, my inputs were pretty much the same as year
Okay.
one. It's just I was, you know, like I tell new agents, like, when you first start, you're not good yet, and it's not
Mhm.
reasonable for you to be good because
Right.
why would you be good? Because you're just starting.
Right.
So by year one, I just wasn't good, and then year two, because I was just working, I just became good, or became somewhat close to good.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
I think that's kind of what it was.
How'd you do year 3?
Year 3 was interesting. I actually, yeah, that was interesting. So I'm gonna say I did something that I don't want any agent to do. So the biggest before I get into that, I'll say the biggest goal for me when I was starting in real estate was housing stability.
Mhm.
So I know I talked about a little bit of my background, but what I didn't say is, love my parents to death. But we were clashing at the time because things were really unexpected. Like, with me staying home from college and being an adult in the house, it gets very tough.
Mhm.
So I actually got kicked out of the house at 19.
Mm.
And I was living with my grandma at the time, up until I bought my house. So getting a house was one of the biggest things for me. And at my brokerage, like, it was instilled into us, like, you had quote unquote made it if you made six figures and you brought a house.
Mhm.
So because I had a good second year, I was able to buy my house in March the following year. So I brought my house, and I was making over 6 figures. So I'm like, okay, well, what next? You know, like,
Mhm.
I don't, you know, where do I go from here?
Yeah.
So I literally took 6 months off after I bought my house. And that's the thing I don't want any other agent to do. But the good
Why?
thing is, so the main reason why I did it is because like I felt like I had peaked. I
Mhm.
didn't know any like way to go up because what like I said, what was constantly being preached to me was okay, 6 figures and you buy a house.
Mhm.
So once I did that, I didn't really know what else to do or think there was any ways to go up.
So what's the one thing that you regret about that taking that 6 months off? There's something that happened that
Mhm.
is making you say, "Hey, if you're an agent, don't do this."
Yeah.
What's
So
that
the
one thing?
Yeah, so when you take a lot of time off, and 6 months is a very long time, but even if you take a month off,
Mhm.
your whole probably next 3 months are gonna be really messed up. Because I tell my agents this all the time too, like, they may not take off, but they'll get busy with the transactions that they have
Mhm.
pending, and they'll put all their focus towards the pending transactions, and what we see is when you do that and you don't prospect, exactly, your next month be 0, your next month is 0, and your next month maybe 1 or
Welcome to the
2.
roller coaster of real estate, baby, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, like, when people say, "Hey, real estate it is commission for sure, but it's an unpredictable business." It doesn't have to be though. It's
Mhm.
only unpredictable because people don't really know their numbers and do the things that they're supposed to do like a real business would.
Well,
So that's how
they act in
Right.
unpredictable ways,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's all
Exactly.
about your actions. It's all about how
Yep.
you look at it. Did you know there's an app that has no side effects that allows you to use sound waves to tell your brain what you want it to do? It's called NuCalm.com and it's amazing. It literally uses sound waves. If you want to tell your brain to go to sleep, if you want to tell your brain to recover, if you want to tell your brain to put you in peak physical state, if you want to tell your brain to focus, if you want to tell your brain to take a power nap, you can do all of these things and more with NuCalm.com. Go to NuCalm.com today, promo code Mike15. NuCalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off.
Exactly. So that's why I say, don't take all that time off. So, 1 month off can damage you. So imagine 6 months off,
Yeah.
So that was tough, but it was actually needed.
What did you
Um,
do for 6 months? I'm dying to know because I could not do that.
I vacation, I was playing video games, I had just met someone, I met a special girl at the
Mhm.
time. So we were going out to eat and going on dates every single day. I had a lot of money saved up.
Yeah.
So I was like, I mean, I peaked in life
Yeah.
or so I thought. So, all right, whatever.
I got you.
Um,
So that
and
6 months went by fast.
yeah, it sure did. Yeah. And the money went by fast too. I'll say
Yeah.
that. So, yeah, it got to the point where it's like, all right, Lil, I really need to get back to work. But when you take so much time off, it's very hard to get back to work. It's super hard. You're rusty, you know, 1 hour in the office can feel like 10 hours. So I dealt with all that stuff. And that's why I don't really take much time off now because I remember back then and coming back, it's really rough.
Well, at least you learned from it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? I
100%.
mean, that's the most invaluable part of all this is you'll make mistakes, it'll cost you money, sometimes a lot, right?
Yeah.
But you learn from it and you get better, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that like Tony Robbins, you know what Tony Robbins is. Tony
Yeah.
Robbins talks about this all the time. When you win, you tend to party.
Yeah.
When you
Yep.
lose, you tend to ponder,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And I
Yep.
tell my son all the time, I'm like, you're gonna learn so much more from losing than you
Yeah,
ever will from winning.
I agree.
Right? I understand everybody wants to be a champion. I
Mhm.
get that. The thing that people don't realize is if you look at a champion and
Mhm.
look closely. The reason why we do our podcast the way we do it
Mhm.
is we want people to learn from your mistakes. We
Yeah,
want people to learn from the wisdom that you've gained, right? So that they're not doing the same thing.
for sure.
Now they might listen to you and go, ah, he doesn't know what he's talking about, and take that 6 months off or year, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then they'll come back and go, oh wow, I should have listened to Chris.
Yeah.
You with
Yeah,
me?
I agree.
So, but it's one of those things where we want people to see sort of this evolution, right? How you got to where you are.
Yep.
Because if you look at any champion, I don't care who they are. I don't care who they are. Look at any of them. And we've had some serious champions on this program.
Yeah.
look at what they've been through to become that champion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
When you go to the airport and you walk up to the ticket counter, there's a kiosk sitting there
Mhm.
where you can serve yourself and you don't
Mhm.
need an attendant, right?
Mhm.
At those kiosks were one of our guests' first businesses,
Oh, wow. Nice.
right?
Nice.
Went on to co-found Priceline.com, went on to co-found ubid.com. Okay.
Nice.
Unbelievably successful. And he's
Mhm.
been on our podcast,
That's great. That's
right?
amazing.
You see what
Yeah.
I'm saying? So,
Mhm.
and what we learned from him was, I mean, his life story is unreal.
Yeah.
I had a real estate investor that's worth $15 million on the other day. And I
Nice.
shared his life story with my wife, and she said, "That's a movie, Mike.
Yeah.
It's got everything, man. It's got
Yeah.
everything." I mean, I'm not joking. You ever get a chance, you should listen to it. It's nuts.
Yeah.
So, but that's why we do what we do, right? Because
Mhm.
everybody has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. So
For
you
sure.
take 6 months off,
Yep.
then what happens?
So this is actually it was actually a blessing in disguise, to be honest with you, because one of the main reasons why I did take the time off is because, like I said, I felt like I peaked.
Yeah.
And that's just because, my environment. And I don't want to, say anything bad about where I started, because I always want to give them their shout out, for taking a
Sure.
chance on a 19-year-old kid and
Yeah.
teaching me real estate. But I kind of just outgrown the place.
Mhm.
And I didn't want to really leave. When I commit to something, I stay a little bit committed too long.
Mhm.
So that's kind of what I was dealing with, but I got connected with a great group of individuals, a person who's my business partner now to this day, some other people who have now become business partners, and we got connected, I'll say probably second half of that year, and I decided to go to their company that they, pretty much were just founding.
Mhm.
So that was actually, I say that's probably the best business decision I made, because at the time, you know, my real estate career before I had made that switch, I was purely a buyer's agent. I had done a
Mhm.
few listings here and there, but I was just pretty much buyer's agent. And I was able to do that though without any any leads or anything like that, because all my leads were coming from social media at that point.
Mhm.
So, I was satisfied with that. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm making good money when I thought I was at the time, 6 figures plus. I didn't really see a need to expand my business, or I didn't really understand how expanding your business works. And then when I got with them, one of my business partners, he was like, "Yo, stop working on buyers." Like, I'm like, "What do you mean stop working buyers? Like, this is where my money's coming from."
Mhm.
And he said, "Stop working buyers. You're gonna make more money if you focus on listings."
Mhm.
So, okay, I was like, "All right, man. I'll listen to what he said," and I started working more listings, and I was able to do more transactions, make more money, and also they taught me about the investing side too,
Mhm.
because that's what they were heavily into, the investing side. So learning those two things, that's how, I've been able to get to this point. And, I just try to implement the same things to my agents and people in my company now. Like, hey, this is what's really going to grow your business. Because buyers are cool and all, of course. But if you really want to scale your business, you can't just be working a bunch of buyers. It's only one you.
Okay. So you're absolutely correct, by the way. And
Mhm.
can we talk about this for just a second?
Let's
Sorry.
do it. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm just I'm naturally curious, right?
Yeah.
So when you started,
Hmm.
did you start working buyers for a specific reason, or were you just working buyers because that's where the leads were coming? That's the leads that were coming to you.
Yeah, I would say it was both. So my brokerage, when I first started, they only wanted us as buyer's agents. So we weren't allowed to take listings at first.
Okay.
Now I kind of, in a sense, bullied my way into listings, because like I had people reaching out to me saying they wanted to
Right.
list their house. Like,
Yeah.
they build a listing.
Well, it's a natural offshoot, right? So are
Yeah,
buyers, by the way,
exactly.
right? Because you go list
Yeah,
houses, you get buyer leads. I mean, it
exactly.
it works both
Yep.
ways.
Yep.
And what's interesting is sellers are what first?
Buyers. Hmm.
Exactly. Right.
Yep.
I tell people that all the time and they look at me like I'm from Mars.
Yeah.
It's like, dude. So,
Hmm.
so can we go back for just a second and talk about your first company?
Yeah.
So your first company, you go to work there and they tell you that you have to work buyers
Yep.
and that you're not allowed to take listings. Okay.
Yep.
So number one, that's I think the first strike against them. Okay. Because now it's all about limits
Yeah.
for you. right? In
Yeah.
terms of what you're allowed to do, what you're allowed to achieve, the whole thing, because everybody knows you only have a certain number of hours in the day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
And it's going to take you 3 times the amount of time
Mm-hmm.
to get a buyer, to help a buyer buy a place, than it is to list a property and sell it.
Yep.
We know
Yeah.
that. We know that's what the statistics tell us, right?
Yeah.
It's literally 3 to 1.
Yeah.
So you're going to make 3 times more dollars per hour, according to the National Association of Realtors, if you
Mm-hmm.
focus on listings versus buyers.
Exactly.
Okay. So we
Yep.
know that that's limiting you. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Then your company's telling you, hey, you need to make 6 figures and you need to buy a house. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that advice at all. Here's the challenge. And let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
When they said make 6 figures and go buy a house, you felt like you were peaked. You felt you
Yeah.
were
Exactly.
where you needed, right? Where they told you
Yep.
to go,
Yep.
right?
Exactly.
So do you think that that's a mistake on the company's part in terms of sort of how they limited people?
Yeah, I do.
I don't know
I
that they intended to do that, but it was sort of an
yeah.
unintended consequence, you know?
Yeah.
And I think
I
it's
mean, I see that.
important that we talk
Uh-huh.
about it simply because there are people in this world that, like you,
Mhm.
that you shouldn't limit.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. That should
Mm.
never happen. It should
Yep.
be, hey, let's get here and then let's go here. Let's get
Yeah.
here and then let's go here. Let's get here. You
Yep.
with me? I would have much
Exactly.
rather if they said, look, and I'm fine with the buyer thing. I'm not criticizing them because that's their business model. Okay.
Yeah.
But my challenge is if I'm sitting with you and you're young, you're new, right? Or newer, and I say to you, go buy, make 6 figures, go buy a house.
Mhm.
What I should be saying to you is, okay, let me ask you a question. Once you make 6 figures, what should you do next?
Yeah. Yep.
You tell me what it is, right? And we're going to agree to it. Then
Yep.
I'm going to ask you, once you buy that house, once you've made 6 figures, once you buy that house, what's next?
Yep.
Where are we going next? Are we
Keep
buying a
going.
bigger
Mhm.
house? Are we
Yep.
buying an investment property? What are we doing?
Mhm.
Okay. You're going to tell me as the business owner what that is as
Yeah.
your broker. You with me? Then
Yep.
I'm going to ask you, okay, that's great, Chris. When we get there, what's next?
Mhm.
What's next? What's you with me?
Yep.
Because the more that your company and your leadership engage you in what the future looks like, right? The more you're going to go make that happen. And you don't feel like you're hitting a ceiling,
Exactly.
right? You're coming up
Yep.
against this thing and you're trying to bust out of it. They lost you because of how they managed you.
Exactly.
You with me? And
Yep.
I think it's important that we talk about it because people need to know that leadership is about communication.
Mhm.
Leadership is about sitting with you, right? And engaging you in the process of here's what my future looks like. Now, the
Yeah.
next company did that.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
Those
Mhm.
those those people are entrepreneurial and
Yep.
they're looking at it in terms of, hey, the sky's the limit. Okay.
Exactly.
And that's what attracted you away from the other company into this one. You with me?
Yeah.
Okay.
100%.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, I agree 100%.
So I
Yeah,
just
I
want
mean,
people to
it's
listen to it
smart.
because there are people that are out there that are listening to this that
Mhm.
own businesses.
Yep.
Okay. And they have people that work in those businesses and we have to start leading our people differently. We have to
Yeah.
start leading our people in ways to where we're part of their future success, right? There are going to be
Exactly.
people that are going to tell you that they never want to sell more than 10 houses a year.
Mhm.
Okay. Then there are going to be people that are going to say, you know what? I sold 10. I think I could sell 30.
Yep.
I think I could sell, you with me?
Yep.
That's
Exactly.
this. Okay. But it
Mhm.
has to come from you. Does that make sense?
Exactly. Yeah, it
Okay.
makes 100%
Okay. Because
sense.
it's your plan. So
Yeah.
like I sat with a 14-year-old the other day and I asked
Mhm.
him, I said, you're in this place that you don't want to be in,
Yep.
and you've told me this is where you'll be happy. How do we get from here to here? He looked at me like I was from Mars. Okay. Because he's
Yeah.
14 years old and all anybody's ever done is order him around.
Mm.
Okay. And I told him, I said, listen, you're not going to get orders from me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not your dad. I'm just
Yeah.
a friend of the family that they believe has the ability to connect with you, right?
Yeah.
And so I said, listen, you're going to have to put the plan together. And
Yep.
he goes, well, why? I said, well, let me ask you a
Their
question.
life. Yeah.
If I put the plan together and I give it to you, who owns the plan? He goes, you do. I said, if you put the plan together and you give it to me, who owns the plan? He goes, I do. I go, which is
Yep.
more important? That I
Yeah.
own the plan or you own it? Whose plan is it?
Yep.
It's your life. You with me?
I agree. I
By the way, this
agree.
is all stuff you can use when you're managing people too.
Yeah,
Just
this is good.
just saying, just saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is good
I'm
for
just
sure.
saying. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So you take the 6 months off, you go join this new company, which
Mhm.
I'm totally stoked for you, by the way. So
Thank you.
you go join this new company. Now
Yep.
they're talking to you about, hey, you need to use your time better. You need to go
Yep.
focus on listings. Okay.
Mhm.
So you're focusing on listings and you're focusing on investing in real estate. Talk about that for a second. And what are you doing currently?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So get to where I'm at currently, kind of got to go back to that
No, go
that
ahead.
time
I
when
want
I
to hear
first
the
started.
story. So I
For
want to
sure.
hear how you got to where you are.
Yeah, definitely. So I would focus more on listings. Like my prospecting would pretty much just be towards listings at that point.
Mhm.
The buyers, I was just coming in very easily at that point through the social media leads where it was little really to none. And then because I'm focusing on listings, I probably was with them, let's say like a year or so, where it got to the point where, okay, I'm probably working 20 hours a week, my days are done by like 11 and I'm still having pretty good production and I'm making the money that I want to make, selling the exact amount of houses that I wanted to. And then I thought to myself, like, all right, we can actually make this bigger, we can do better, because they
I
would
love
talk to
how
me.
you think, by the way.
Yeah, thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, because I mean, even got to the point like the social media was really, really taking off. So I felt I was capped in a sense, like just my mental capacity, and I like to travel, do different things. So I had it like things set up, like my CRM. When I got a lead from social media, it would go straight to my CRM. I had an automatic campaign and things like that. So
Mhm.
I would really only know about a lead coming in when they literally raise their hand saying, "Hey, I want to meet tomorrow." But
Right.
the issue with that is, hey, I'm actually in Italy right now.
Yeah.
I can't, really meet you tomorrow. So I would just see so many leads falling through the cracks, or even, the direct messages that were coming in. I just couldn't get to all of them because I just
Mhm.
didn't have the capacity to do it. So that's when I had the idea of, bringing another agent on, because
Mhm.
I'm like, all right, I'm leaving so much, literally, I'm leaving hundreds of thousands of dollars in commissions on the table. So let me just bring on another agent. Pretty easy fix to me. So I just made a story post. I was like, hey, I'm looking to bring on another agent. I had a bunch of people reach out. Um, I chose one, and I would say it went pretty well. He was already licensed. Thing is, he was licensed with a different company for a bit over a year, but every company is different. I'll say that. So when he got to me, he didn't know how to write a contract. So
Mhm.
I kind of had to start him up from new
After a year.
after a year. Yeah. Yeah. So it's not like he was brand new. Like he had been
Oh
licensed
my
for a while.
goodness. Wow.
So, I remember literally I was on vacation. It wasn't nothing crazy. I was just in North Carolina, and he had called me when I was at, lunch with my lady. And yeah, I had to take about 3 hours out of lunch to walk him through writing the offer. So,
Wow.
I got the evil eye from that,
Yeah.
from
Yeah, you did.
but yeah, so he joined with me, and within a few short months he closed his first home. I'm like,
Cool.
okay, well, cool. All right. This actually works. So let me bring on somebody else.
Mhm.
All right. And she started closing homes very quickly. And
Mhm.
then I brought on somebody else, and I brought on somebody else, and I brought on somebody else. And that's how we are today, with the assets real estate team. So currently we have what, I believe 12 agents at this current time.
Wow. Good job,
So
man. That's
thank you.
awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, we've got a pretty good squad, I'll say. And I love it, man. I love being in this position because, like you had mentioned earlier, leadership, it really means everything.
Yeah.
Um, and even though, I felt capped where I was at, when I was first starting, I make sure to instill among my agents, hey, there's no caps, there's
Yeah.
no limits. Hey, like the first thing I ask somebody when I'm interviewing them is, what is your Mount Everest? And I say your Mount Everest is your 5-year goal from now. All right,
Mhm.
your 5-year goal from now. Let's get this very specific. And now we have your 5-year goal. Let's work backwards from there. And
Mhm.
I have regular conversations with people. And I say, hey, your goal's not big enough. people will say, hey, I want to make 6 figures. You
Mhm.
can make 6 figures next year. You don't got to wait 5 years to make 6 figures.
Right.
So these are regular conversations I have with my people, and that's what I love what I do because it's just encouraging them to think bigger,
Mhm.
think better. Like life is limitless. You can make life whatever you want it to be.
Yeah.
So
That's
yeah,
awesome, dude. That's awesome.
thank you,
I'm proud
thank
of
you.
you.
I appreciate that truly.
That's
I
awesome.
appreciate that.
So now where you are is you have
Yes.
12 agents.
Yep.
You're closing how many homes per year?
Last year we did 182 homes.
Wow. That is so awesome. So
Thank you.
how many what's your goal for this year?
Our goal is, oof, I should know that off the top of my head. Let me do some quick
Mhm.
math. But so I want to do 20. Um, so that would be 240, 20 per month. So that would be 240, which
Right.
is, I know it's a steep goal, but I believe in us. I know we
Well,
can
you
do
did
it.
15 a month last year.
Yeah.
So 20 a month is
hmm
right? Okay.
Yeah, I definitely think we can do it. I'm excited to see my people, they're hardworking, they're very motivated. And then also I've one of the biggest things I've learned, from being in this leadership position is when I first started a team, it was just me and my TC.
Mhm.
I was doing everything. I was even making the graphics that we and posting them on social media. I've learned to leverage things or
Yeah.
outsource some things. I'll say that. So now we have a lot of things in place, like a lot of staff, and I can spend my time towards, growing the company instead of working on the little minute things. But one of the biggest things that I learned with bringing on new agents and training them is I would have to repeat myself all the time.
Mhm.
Like I'm like, dang, yesterday I just went over, writing a picra. Like I keep on doing this every single day. So I was getting really frustrated, and then I thought, Chris, why are you getting frustrated? There's always a solution for something.
Mhm.
So I just thought about it some more, and somebody wise told me if you gotta say it more than twice, write it down. I'm like, okay, let's do that.
Mhm.
But instead of writing it down, what I did was I put it electronically.
Mhm.
So any agent who comes onto my team now, you get a whole folder with SOPs, standard operating procedures that tells
Mhm.
you every single thing that you need to do to be an agent and to be a successful agent. And my mindset with that is, hey, I want to be able to take, let's say, a houseless person from the street. They
Mhm.
get access to our systems, our training, and within 90 days, you can sell a home.
Mhm.
And I haven't, taken a house person from the street yet, but we have taken brand new agents and people who've been licensed and other companies haven't sold anything. Now they're closing multiple homes per month. So
Right.
the system works, and it saved me a lot of time. It saved me a lot of stress doing that. It takes a lot of time to get it up, but once you have it there, okay, cool. Now it's ready and up and running.
Gotcha. So you're going to your people
hmm
and you're saying to them, your goals aren't big enough.
Yeah, all the time.
So do you
I
mind
always
if I
tell
make a
people.
suggestion?
Uh huh.
I would go to them and say, can I ask you a question?
hmm
Are your goals big enough?
Mm. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
And let me ask you a question. Where you are right now in
Yeah.
working with us, scale of 1 to 10, 1 being
Mhm.
completely unacceptable, 10 being you knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
Where are we?
Mm.
And if they say 5, then ask them, okay, how could we make it a 10?
Yeah.
How could we make it a 10 plus?
Yep.
How could we make it a 10 plus plus? Okay.
Mhm.
And when you're sitting with them and you're asking them those questions, write down what their answers are.
Okay.
Because what it'll do, Chris, is it'll validate them.
Okay.
Okay. So instead of saying to them, hey, your goals aren't big enough,
Mhm.
right? Sit down with them and say, let me ask you a question. If there were no limitations, if there were no restrictions, money was not an object,
Yeah.
what would you want to make per year?
Mm.
What would the perfect position be for you? Right? And
Yeah.
let them tell you what it is that they value.
Mhm.
Okay. And then once they do that and you write it down, then come back to them and say, okay, great. If your goal 5 years from now is to make 2 million a year,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Where do you need to be year 4? Where do you need to be year 3? Where do you need to be year 2? Where do you need to be this year?
Yep.
Okay.
That's good.
Right. And let them tell you and then go, great. Okay. So if you're currently here and you want to be here, right? So if you're here and you want to be here,
Yeah.
how do we get there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
And let them tell you. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, there's going to be points where they're going to come to you and go, I'm not quite sure how to get here,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
You've done it, but I'm not quite sure how to do that, right?
Mhm.
And then at that point, you can say, okay, well, do you mind if I help you? Do you mind if
Yeah.
I walk you, right? And what I'm going to suggest to you is come to it from a place of curiosity. Okay.
Yeah.
Ask, just ask. I'm writing a
Okay.
book on the power of questions.
Okay.
And the reason I'm doing it is because one of the things that's happening, you mentioned social media quite a bit. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna back up for just a second if it's okay. I'm gonna recommend two books to you.
Okay.
One is Never Split the Difference with Chris Voss.
I've got that one.
Okay. So do you remember the part where where he
I
talks about the
haven't read it
power?
yet,
Oh,
but
okay,
it's in
okay,
my
okay.
library.
Sorry, I
Yeah.
don't want to ruin
Yeah.
it. Okay.
No,
So
you're
make sure
good.
you read it because it's one of my
Uh-huh.
favorite books. I've literally listened to it like 12 times now.
Nice. Okay.
Okay. I keep going back to it because I keep
Yeah.
learning something, right?
For sure.
I listen to audiobooks when I'm working out and
Yeah.
driving and that kind of thing, right? The
Yeah.
other one is Nobody's Coming to Save You.
Mm.
It's a book written by a guy by the name of Scott Mann, who's a retired lieutenant colonel from the Army. He was a Green Beret.
Okay.
Okay. And what he talks about in that book is the thing called the churn.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, he's onto something. Okay. He's
Mhm.
absolutely onto something. And what he's saying basically is social media is turning us against each other. Social media is making us enemies where we otherwise were friends.
True.
Okay. And
Yeah.
it's isolating us and making us into hyper partisan tribes.
Mhm.
Okay. Where if you don't agree, if you don't think the way I do politically, you're the enemy.
Yeah.
Well, that's not necessarily true,
I
right?
agree. Yeah, I agree.
So
It's not true.
the reason why the churn is such a big deal is it has changed the way that we communicate, Chris. Okay. It's changed what we think a conversation is. If you talk to a young person today, they'll
Mhm.
tell you that they think a conversation, not all of them, but some of them, most of them think that a conversation is I'm talking to you and you're thinking about what you're going to say next. That's actually a debate.
True. Yeah.
Okay. I was
Yeah,
one of the
listen.
best in the nation at debating. I was
Okay.
very good at arguing, right?
Nice.
The thing is, a conversation is really I'm talking to you and you're thinking about what it is that I'm saying. Okay. And you're actually listening to me and you're
Yep.
trying to figure out, hey, is there something I need clarification on?
Mhm.
Okay. And then you're asking me about what I just said. We call it piggyback questions. We also call it active listening.
Okay.
You with me?
Yeah.
The more you can go to your people and be curious, the more
Mm.
you can go to your clients and be curious, the more you can go to the people in your family, right? Your spouse, your, girlfriend, whatever, right?
Yeah, yeah.
When you start having kids,
Mhm.
ask, ask, ask. Okay. Because they're literally programmed to answer questions. And what happens is when we ask people questions about them and
Mhm.
they tell us about them, they're bonding with us
Yeah.
on a
Yeah, I
deeper
agree.
level.
That's
That,
good.
is that fair?
Yeah, that's good. Nice.
Okay. So thanks for letting me jump in. I appreciate that.
Of course,
So
no
what
problem.
does tomorrow look like for Chris A. Williams?
Tomorrow, literally tomorrow or what? Next couple what do you mean tomorrow?
Well, what does the next year look like?
Yeah. So right now what I'm currently doing is I'm just trying to get the real estate company like fix all the let's say the holes in the boat in a
Yeah.
sense. There's so many different functions of a company. And that's what a lot of my learning has been, a lot more business based instead of real estate based. So getting into the nerdy things like, figuring out your lifetime value of a customer, stuff, things you're not taught in real estate school. So that's what most of
Right.
my day is doing. Even churn, like you mentioned, little
Mhm.
things like that. So really just trying to get everything situated with that and then it's expansion on that. Because the beautiful thing about, like I said, the SOPs and what I provide the agents is pretty much a give it to you and go model. So
Mhm.
if I can give it to one location, why can't I replicate it among different
It's
locations?
scalable.
Is that it's scalable, exactly,
Right.
and that's the biggest thing with the business, is I wanna make it very scalable,
Mhm.
and that's why we have so much things virtually too. So that's really the next step, I'll say. So, like I mentioned, the Mount Everest, my Mount Everest is getting my company to 100 locations in 5 years.
Wow.
So, hey, I got 4 years and what, like 11 months left to do it. So
Okay.
that's what I'm
Okay.
constantly doing, just grinding it out when it comes to that.
So if somebody's interested in working with your company, how do they reach you?
Yeah, so you can reach me directly on my socials everywhere is at I am Chris A. Williams. That's everywhere. That's YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all that. If you want to see my company though, that's our username is at Assets Real Estate Team. So we're on YouTube, we're on Instagram, and we're on Facebook. Also LinkedIn too for both. Same usernames for both.
Why the name Assets?
Great question, man. I debated the name for so much. Like when I was trying to found the company, I knew I didn't want to be the Chris A. Williams team. I knew that. So I was trying to think, okay, what name can I use that somebody hasn't already used?
Mhm.
Because everybody has, a real estate team. They have a name. And then I was, thinking, like we mentioned, the investing thing,
Mhm.
assets.
Mhm.
That's really kind of what we're all working for at the end of the day. Money isn't what we're working for because money's just a tool.
Mhm.
Your assets will be able to give you the freedom that we're all looking for. So
Mhm.
that's why I said, okay, we're going to be the assets real estate team because we want to be, we want to get assets ourselves, of course, but we also want to be the biggest asset to our clients too. So that, and then, one of our slogans is wealth through real estate, which ties, of course, to assets.
Cool. So if somebody wants, so they can reach you through social media,
Yep.
they can go to Assets Real Estate Group to reach you about regarding the
Assets real estate
company.
team.
Are
Yep.
you hiring brand new agents or are you just
I
hiring
am.
agents that have experience? What are you looking for?
Yeah, I am. I will, of course, I love my agents with experience, but I also welcome brand new agents too, because the great thing is, hey, it's a already done for you model. Like
Right.
a lot of newer agents, their issue is they kind of get, just thrown out to the
Mhm.
pool or thrown out in the ocean with the sharks. We don't want that here. We have a lot of training, we have a lot of stuff, so you can actually be successful fairly quick. So yeah, I mean, any agent who really wants to grow their business, scale their business, that's what we're taking on.
Are you franchising yet?
Not yet. I've considered that. I don't know necessarily if it'll be a franchise or a licensing model. I'm kind of debating with it. I know a lot of real estate companies they do the franchise model. I don't know how necessarily I feel about it yet.
Okay. Okay.
you know? So
So are you
just
writing a book?
I'm not writing. I do want to write a book though. I want to even in this like short, podcast, I've been like, dang, there's been a lot of crazy things that's happened in my life, and
Mhm.
I haven't even really touched on half of it,
Mhm.
So there, I think, if I wrote a book, it would be really good, and it would be like a movie. So that's definitely on the agenda. But I'm the type of person, I try to do one task at a time. So like even you mentioned with investing,
Mhm.
like I love my investing business, but I kind of got to take a break from it to get my stuff situated with the assets real estate team first. Same thing with the book. Once I have some more free time and can like really hone in and dedicate time to that, yeah, for sure, I definitely want to do that.
Cool. So when you write the book, come back on. If you decide to
Okay.
franchise, come back on the podcast and we'll talk about it.
Okay, that sounds great.
Anything else you want to cover before we wrap up?
No, I just want to say, I appreciate you again, Mike, for having me on. And, like I said, to start, my goal was providing some value to the people. So whoever is listening to this, I hope I was able to provide you with some value. Um, my YouTube, people always ask me like, do I have things to sell or anything like that? I don't. I just have a bunch of free content. So if you guys want to check out my YouTube for, some videos on real estate investing, check out my YouTube. It's at I am Chris A. Williams. So yeah, appreciate you again, Mike.
Beautiful, buddy. Great to meet you. Thanks again for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question? Did you know that there's a technology that uses sound waves that'll tell your brain what to do? There literally is. It's called NuCalm.com. It can tell your brain to heal, tell your brain to sleep, tell your brain to do all kinds of things. It can get you fired up. It can be a pre-workout. NuCalm.com. And the promo code is Mike15. NuCalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at the Mike Litton Experience.